poor maid who spent her life quietly serving a billionaire's household never imagined her kindness would be repaid with cruelty. One morning, she was accused of stealing a priceless jewel. With no lawyer, no family to stand by her, she was dragged into court, mocked, and humiliated in front of everyone. The powerful mother-in-law, driven by hatred, was certain she would finally destroy the maid. The judge leaned forward, ready to give the final verdict. It seemed nothing could save her. But then, something happened that left the entire courtroom frozen. The billionaire's little son, who loved the maid like a mother, slipped away from his nanny and ran inside. In his small hands, he carried a secret that no one expected, a truth that would shatter the lies and change everything. Before we continue with this story, dear viewers, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to know. Lillian had worked in the Anderson mansion for nearly 5 years. She was not family. She was not rich. She was not educated like the others. Yet, in her quiet way, she had become a piece of the home that nobody could ignore. She knew every corner of the large house, every routine of the workers, every mood of the master, Lucas Anderson. Lucas was a billionaire businessman, a man of wealth and power, but also a man carrying a wound in his heart. His wife had passed away years earlier, leaving behind their only son, Justin, a boy too young to understand why his mother never came back. In the silence of the mansion, where money filled every wall but love often felt missing, Lillian stepped in. She never replaced Justin's mother, but she gave him warmth. She read him stories before bed, tied his shoelaces in the morning, and listened when he spoke about his fears. For a boy who had lost the comfort of his mother's arms, Lillian's gentle care became the closest thing to home. Lucas noticed this bond. He was grateful, though he said little. In her presence, the house felt less empty. But not everyone felt the same. Evelyn, Lucas's mother-in-law, watched with eyes of fire. To her, Lillian was not just a maid. She was a threat, a shadow standing too close to the memory of her late daughter. Every time she saw Justin hug Lillian, every time she caught Lucas smiling faintly when Lillian passed, Evelyn's heart twisted with bitterness. In her mind, Lillian was trying to replace the daughter she had buried. "You don't belong here," Evelyn once hissed under her breath when she crossed Lillian in the hallway. Lillian lowered her eyes, respectful as always. "I'm only here to serve, ma'am," she whispered. But those words did not soften Evelyn. They only fueled her anger. And anger, when mixed with grief, can turn into something dangerous. Weeks later, the house was thrown into chaos. Evelyn claimed that her late daughter's diamond necklace, an heirloom she cherished more than anything, had disappeared. Servants searched, guards searched, but no trace of it could be found. Evelyn wasted no time in pointing her finger. "It was her," she said, her voice cutting through the air like a knife. "That maid, that woman who pretends to be kind. She has been stealing from us all along." Gasps filled the room. Lillian's knees nearly gave way. "No, no, I would never," she stammered, her voice breaking. But Evelyn was relentless. "Do you expect us to believe you? A poor maid with no name, no family, no status? You think we don't see how close you're getting to Lucas? To my grandson? This is not kindness, this is ambition. You want to take what does not belong to you." Lillian's eyes filled with tears. She shook her head, but no one came forward to defend her. The other workers looked away, too afraid of Evelyn's power. When the police arrived and searched Lillian's small room, the necklace was found hidden in the corner of her drawer. Evelyn's scream of, "I told you so," echoed through the halls. Lillian collapsed. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. She knew she was innocent, but the evidence crushed her like a weight she couldn't lift. Within hours, Evelyn used her influence to push the case into court. Lillian had no money for a lawyer. She was dragged away, her hands trembling, her face wet with tears. The courtroom was cold, filled with strangers. Lillian sat alone on the wooden bench, her head bowed. Across from her sat Evelyn, her face stern, her dress spotless, surrounded by lawyers in sharp suits. To everyone present, it looked like a battle already won. Judge Wilson entered, his robe flowing, his gavel striking the desk. Order in the court. The trial began. Evelyn's lawyers painted Lillian as a cunning thief. They spoke of her background, her poverty, her closeness to Lucas and Justin. Every word was another knife cutting into her dignity. When the judge asked Lillian to defend herself, her voice shook. "Your Honor, I did not steal. I would never. That necklace, it was not mine. I never touched it." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some shook their heads, already convinced she was lying. To them, it was simple. The word of the wealthy against the tears of the poor. Lillian's trembling hands pressed together, silently praying for a miracle, not knowing that the miracle would soon walk through those courtroom doors. The whispers in the courtroom grew louder as Evelyn sat confidently, her hands folded neatly on her lap. She wore black, as if mourning the reputation of her late daughter, but her eyes gleamed with triumph. To her, this day was not about truth, it was about revenge. Judge Wilson looked over his glasses at the lawyers. "Proceed," he commanded. Evelyn's lead lawyer, a tall man with a sharp jaw and an even sharper tongue, stood up. "Your Honor, the case is simple. This woman, Lillian, was trusted to live in the Anderson home. She had access to every room, every drawer, every belonging. And what did she do with that trust? She betrayed it. She stole a priceless jewel belonging to Mrs. Evelyn Anderson, an heirloom passed down for generations. We have clear evidence. We have the necklace itself found in her room. What more proof do we need?" The words landed like stones on Lillian's chest. She sat frozen, her hands clutching each other so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She wanted to scream, to shout that it was a lie, but her throat felt dry, her voice trapped. The lawyer paced slowly, turning his gaze toward the bench where Lillian Saturday. People like her, they see wealth, they see power, and they think they can take it. She saw an opportunity, and she acted. This is not a misunderstanding. This is theft. Lillian lowered her head. Her tears fell quietly, staining the simple dress she wore. The murmurs in the room grew harsher. Some people nodded at the lawyer's words. Others whispered, "She looks guilty." Across the room, Evelyn sat still as stone, her lips pressed into a thin smile. Every time Lillian lifted her eyes, she met Evelyn's cold stare, and it made her tremble. She remembered Evelyn's warning weeks before. "You don't belong here." Now it all made sense. Evelyn had planned this. When the judge turned his gaze to Lillian, his tone softened slightly. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Her lips trembled. She tried to speak, but her words came out broken. "Your Honor, I did not steal. I cared for that house with all my heart. I cared for little Justin as if he were my own. I would never bring shame to him, to Mr. Anderson, or to the memory of his late mother. I did not touch that necklace. Please, believe me." Her voice cracked, echoing through the silent room. For a moment, there was a pause, a breath of silence where her honesty hung in the air. But then Evelyn's lawyer chuckled coldly. "Touching words, Your Honor," he said. "But words do not change facts. Facts are that the necklace was found in her drawer. She had no explanation for it being there. And now she plays the victim, crying and begging for mercy. But this court is not moved by tears. It is moved by truth. And the truth is, she stole." Lillian bowed her head. The humiliation was unbearable. To her, every pair of eyes in that courtroom was heavy with judgment. Evelyn finally rose from her seat, her presence commanding. "Your Honor," she said firmly, "I do not wish to speak out of turn, but I must. That necklace was my daughter's, the only piece of her I have left. For it to disappear from my home was like losing her all over again. And then to find it in the hands of a servant?" Her voice shook, though not with pain, but with calculated performance. "This woman has no respect for my daughter's memory, no respect for our family. If you let her go free, she will continue to bring shame to us all. I beg this court for justice." Her words struck deep. Lillian felt her legs weaken. She wanted to collapse, but she forced herself to sit still. She thought of Justin, of the way he held her hand when he was scared, of the nights he cried himself to sleep, and she whispered songs until his breathing slowed. If she was condemned, what would become of him? Would he be left only with Evelyn's bitterness? The thought nearly broke her. The trial dragged on. Witness after witness, all servants of the house were called. None of them had seen Lillian take the necklace, but none dared to defend her either. They only shook their heads and said they didn't know. Fear of Evelyn's power chained their tongues. By the time the judge called for a short recess, Lillian felt her spirit slipping away. She sat alone, staring at her hands. The room emptied slowly, the sound of footsteps fading until she was left with only her thoughts. She whispered to herself, "God, please, don't let it end like this. Not in shame, not when I am innocent." When the recess ended and the judge returned, his gavel struck again. Order in the court. Evelyn's lawyer stood once more. "Your Honor, this case is clear. The defendant has no lawyer, no defense, no witness. She cannot explain why the necklace was in her drawer. She cannot prove her innocence. We demand judgment." The words fell like thunder. Lillian closed her eyes, her tears falling silently. She could almost feel the chains around her wrists already. She could almost see herself being led away. And then, something happened. The heavy doors of the courtroom creaked open. Heads turned. Gasps echoed softly. A small figure entered, walking hesitantly but firmly. It was Justin Lucas Anderson's little boy. He clutched something in his small hands, his eyes wide but determined. "Your Honor," he said, his voice trembling but clear. "Please don't say she's guilty. I need to tell you the truth." The entire room froze. Evelyn's face went pale, and for the first time since the trial began, fear flickered in her eyes. Lillian looked up, her breath catching in her chest. Her heart whispered, "Justin." The silence in the courtroom was so deep that even the ticking of the wall clock could be heard. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the small boy who now stood near the judge's bench. His hands shook, but his voice carried a weight that no one could ignore. Judge Wilson leaned forward, his expression softening. "And who are you, young man?" Justin swallowed hard. "My name is Justin Anderson. I'm Lucas Anderson's son." The room stirred. Reporters whispered, lawyers exchanged glances, and Evelyn's face grew stiff. She clenched her fists beneath the table, trying to remain composed, but her breathing quickened. The judge studied the boy with gentle eyes. "And why are you here, son? This is not an easy place for a child." Justin took a deep breath and looked at Lillian. His eyes were full of tears, but his voice carried a strength beyond his years. "Because I can't let her be punished for something she didn't do. She's innocent. I saw what really happened." Gasps filled the courtroom. Evelyn's face went pale. "Justin, stop this nonsense," she snapped, her voice trembling. "Go back to your nanny. This is no place for children." But Justin shook his head firmly. "No, Grandma, I have to tell the truth." The judge raised his hand, silencing the murmurs. "Let the boy speak. Go on, son. Tell us what you saw." Justin stepped closer to the bench, his little hands clutching the necklace tightly. His voice cracked, but he spoke with honesty. "It happened the night the necklace went missing. I couldn't sleep, so I got out of bed. I was walking in the hallway when I saw Grandma going into Lillian's room. She didn't know I was there. I followed her quietly because I was scared." The room held its breath. Evelyn's eyes darted around nervously. but she stayed silent. Justin's lips trembled as he continued. I saw her holding the necklace in her hand. She opened Lillian's drawer and put it inside. Then she left quickly. I didn't understand at first, but I knew it was wrong. Lillian never takes things that don't belong to her. She's the one who takes care of me, who helps me when I cry at night. She loves me like a mommy would. She would never steal. His little voice cracked on the last words, and tears rolled down his cheeks. The audience gasped. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras clicked. Justin lifted his small hand and held out the necklace. I took this before the police could find it. I kept it hidden because I knew Grandma put it there. I was scared to tell anyone, but today, I couldn't stay quiet. Lillian doesn't deserve this. She is not a thief. She is my family. For a moment, the courtroom was frozen in stunned silence. Evelyn's face twisted with anger and panic. She slammed her hand on the table. He's just a child. He doesn't know what he's saying. He's confused, making up stories because this woman has poisoned his mind. But Justin's small frame shook as he shouted back, I'm not lying. I know what I saw. You did it, Grandma. You wanted everyone to hate Lillian, but I love her, and I won't let you hurt her anymore. The judge's gavel banged loudly. Order! Order in the court! He turned his eyes to Evelyn. Mrs. Anderson, do not interrupt the boy. Evelyn's lips pressed tightly together, her face red with rage. Judge Wilson then turned back to Justin. His voice softened. Son, are you sure of what you're saying? You understand that telling the truth here is very important? Justin nodded firmly, wiping his tears with his sleeve. Yes, Your Honor. I'm telling the truth. I saw everything with my own eyes. Lillian sat frozen, tears streaming down her face. Her hands covered her mouth as she watched Justin, the little boy she had loved and cared for, stand so bravely for her. Her heart swelled with both fear and pride. Justin, she whispered, her voice breaking. Lucas Anderson, who had been sitting quietly at the back of the courtroom, finally stood. His tall frame and powerful presence drew every eye. He walked forward and placed a protective hand on his son's shoulder. My boy does not lie, Lucas said firmly. His voice carried a weight that silenced the murmurs. If he says he saw it, then he saw it, and I will stand by him. The judge nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. He leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. This testimony cannot be ignored. The honesty of a child, combined with the physical evidence in his hand, paints a very different picture from what we have heard so far. He looked directly at Evelyn, whose face had lost all its color. Mrs. Anderson, do you wish to respond to your grandson's words? Evelyn stammered, her confidence shattering. He's mistaken. He must have dreamed it. He doesn't know what he saw. But her voice trembled, and the room knew she was lying. The whispers now turned against her. Reporters murmured, the boy saw it all. Staff members exchanged looks, guilt in their eyes for never defending Lillian earlier. The judge banged his gavel again. This court will not take the testimony of an innocent child lightly. We will hear closing arguments before I make my ruling. As the recess was called, Lillian buried her face in her hands. She cried, not from pain, but from relief. For the first time, the weight on her shoulders felt lighter. She looked at Justin, who now sat beside his father, his little body shaking from the courage it took to speak. And in her heart, she whispered, Thank you, Justin. You saved me. Evelyn sat frozen, her face drained of color as the judge's words echoed through the courtroom. Lillian is innocent. The proud woman who once walked into the room with confidence now looked smaller than ever. The whispers around her grew louder, reporters scribbling her shame, bystanders shaking their heads. For the first time, Evelyn felt what it was like to be on the other side of judgment. Judge Wilson leaned forward, his voice firm. Mrs. Anderson, you let grief twist into hatred. Instead of protecting your family, you chose to destroy an innocent woman. This court warns you. Power is not a license to lie. Justice does not bow to wealth. The gavel struck one last time. Case dismissed. Lillian collapsed into her chair, tears streaming down her cheeks. She had walked into the courtroom as a criminal in the eyes of many, but she was leaving as a woman cleared of shame. The weight was gone, though her heart still trembled with emotion. Justin ran to her again, holding her hand tightly. "I told the truth for you," he whispered proudly. She pulled him into her arms, hugging him as if she would never let go. "You are braver than anyone I've ever known," she said softly. Lucas Anderson stood behind them, his voice filled with gratitude. "You saved her, son. And Lillian, thank you for loving him when the world thought only of appearances. You are not just a maid, you are part of this family." But then, Lucas's expression hardened. He turned slowly toward Evelyn, his voice low at first, but sharp enough to pierce the room. "You should be ashamed, Evelyn." She froze, her eyes wide. Lucas stepped closer, his tall frame casting a shadow over her. "You lost a daughter, and I lost a wife. But instead of honoring her memory, you used your grief to punish an innocent woman, the very woman who cared for your grandson when no one else could. You planted that necklace, you dragged her into court, and you humiliated her in front of the world. Tell me, what part of that honors your daughter?" Evelyn's lips trembled. I only wanted to protect my family." "Protect?" Lucas snapped, his voice booming. "You tried to destroy the only person who made Justin smile again. You wanted to erase the only light left in his life. That's not protection, Evelyn. That's cruelty." The courtroom fell silent, every eye fixed on the confrontation. Lucas's voice softened, but it carried even more weight. "You may be his grandmother, but if you ever try to harm Lillian again, if you ever try to twist truth into lies, I will not forgive you. My son deserves better, and my late wife would never have wanted this." Evelyn lowered her head, shame flooding her face. She could not meet his eyes. For the first time, she felt the full weight of what she had done. Lillian stood quietly, holding Justin close, her tears mixing sorrow with relief. She had been vindicated, not just by the court, but by the very family she served. As they left the courtroom, Evelyn trailed behind, her steps heavy, the cameras capturing her downfall. Meanwhile, Lillian walked out holding Justin's hand. The sunlight outside felt warmer, brighter, as if the world itself knew she had been freed. Justin tugged her hand and looked up at her with innocent eyes. "Can I still call you Mommy?" Her tears returned, but this time they were tears of joy. She smiled through them and nodded. "Yes, Justin, always." The crowd around them softened, many clapping quietly, others moved to tears.